What's up guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Quick Flicks. Today we are covering The Strangers, directed by Brian Bertino, releasing in 2008. The Strangers is a fairly basic home invasion movie, following a couple getting teased and tormented by a group of, you guessed it, strangers, whilst in their country home. This movie will give you an adrenaline rush, and I definitely recommend watching it for the thrill ride it puts you through. Anyway, I'll stop wasting your time and hop into the movie. The movie opens up with some text on screen about how the upcoming story is very loosely based on true events, but not the ones described on the next slide. It's actually inspired by two different real-life events, the multiple homicide Manson family tape murders, and a series of break-ins that occurred in director Brian Bertino's neighborhood as a child. This leads into a distressed 911 call of a child named Jordan, who we see on screen walking into a wrecked house with his buddy and discovering a massacre. We then move on to the day before, seeing a couple, Kristen and James, played by Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. You may recognize Speedman from the recently released Season 3 of You as Joe Goldberg's successful CEO neighbor, Matthew. Although the house seems all romantic and loving, these two look far from, as Kristen cries in the tub and James drinks and eats some ice cream alone in the kitchen. He puts a ring on the table and we get a flashback of just a few hours prior when he proposed to her outside of their friend's wedding, but she just wasn't ready yet. The two very obviously still care deeply for each other, as Kristen joins him and they sit there in sorrow. They chat for a bit and James goes to spin up a record. They share a long emotional hug, which leads into them about to do the do when they suddenly hear a loud bang on the door. They go to open to see a creepy girl with her face covered by darkness, asking if someone named Tamra is home. They inform her that she has the wrong house, and she walks away, the two finding the encounter very strange. They head back inside, where the sexual tensions have worn off, and they once again sit in sorrow. James lights a fire for Kristen and decides to take a ride to clear his mind. Also needing to relieve some stress, Kristen puts on some tunes and relaxes around the house with some adult refreshments. Suddenly, a very loud bang erupts on the front door once again. She walks up and talks through, asking who's there. It's the same girl, asking for Tamra once again. Kristen informs her that she's already been by, and there's no Tamra here. Being a bit freaked out, she tries to go back to relaxing, but notices the smoke from the fire is becoming too much, and sets off the smoke detector. She goes to turn it off, and another loud bang from the front door causes her to drop it. She ain't playing around anymore. She tries calling James from her cell phone, only to find that it's dead. She plugs it into the charger and grabs the house phone, getting a hold of him this time around. She explains the situation, asking him to come home, but the call suddenly goes dead. She lights up, man, and grabs a cup of water from the kitchen, where we see Spooky Mask Man in the back just staring at her. She turns around and oh my god, he's gone. She hears another loud noise, this time from inside the house. She equips herself with a kitchen knife and goes to check it out. She heads to the front door where she hears scraping and looks down to see the smoke detector was picked up and now on a chair, indicating someone has been in the house. This scares her quite a bit. A scraping noise then starts coming from the back window. She goes to take a peek, coming face to face with the masked man. This scares her into oblivion, causing her to scream and not really know what to do. The front door suddenly opens, grabbing her attention. She slowly walks to it, then coming face to face with Dollface. She slams it shut, then locking it. With banging and loud noises coming from every direction at this point, she runs to her bedroom and gets on the ground, politely asking them to leave. The record player suddenly stops, and footsteps get close. She prepares herself, but it ends up being James. He asks what's going on, and she of course explains everything. He doesn't much believe her, and searches the entire house to comfort her, and finds nothing. That is until they take a peek into the front yard, and see Dollface standing there, eerily staring at them. He does in fact find this creepy, but can't call for help as he left his phone out in the car. He goes to retrieve it, seeing that his window was smashed. For some reason he thinks his phone is still in there, and goes to search it regardless. I mean, why would he do this? Does he really believe they just smashed the window for fun and didn't take anything? Come on, James. While searching, he gets a tap from behind. These strangers must have some superhuman abilities, cause I don't know anyone who can teleport like that. Naturally, James is quite startled now, and heads back inside, but immediately thinks they should leave, as he finds his phone on the counter with a missing battery pack. They head to the car, but get trapped as Pinup Girl wrecks into them with a truck. They head back inside, now knowing that this is more of a life or death situation than he originally anticipated. He grabs a gun, and they hide in the closet, awaiting the scary people to enter so he can blast them fools. Back outside, James' friend Mike shows up, but he quickly exits his vehicle when something smashes through the front windshield. This freaks him out a bit, and he decides to just walk to the house. He examines James's damaged vehicle and knows something isn't right, and arms himself. He walks into the house, searching for James and Kristen, when the masked man appears behind him. But before he can axe him up, James is a bit trigger happy and blows his best friend's head off. Poor Mike. The two are a bag of emotions right now, ranging from scared and sad to mad and peed off. Mike decides to head outside and go to the shed, as there is a radio inside that they can use to call for help. Scouting the area before heading in, he sees Pinup Girl with a flashlight looking around, until she suddenly turns right toward him, the masked man then coming up behind him and knocking him out. Kristen, not feeling too well about hanging behind at the house, decides to sprint for the shed, but rolls her ankle about half a second in. That don't stop her though. She starts crawling when Pinup Girl appears behind her, but lets her crawl on just for fun. She finds the radio that he was talking about and gets in contact with someone, but Pinup Girl puts that to rest quite fast. Kristen then moseys on out of the shed and crawls back to the house. Once inside, she almost gets caught by the masked man, but manages to stay silent and sneak inside the pantry. The bad guys go away, and Kristen wins the battle. Kristen tries talking to Dollface, but she has other plans that include knives and whatnot. The masked man interrupts them though, throwing James into the room. He tells Kristen to run, and she attempts to, but the masked man just catches up to her and throws her against the wall, knocking her clean out. The sun has finally risen, and these two lovebirds awaken to being tied up, with the three strangers standing in front of them. Kristen asks why they are doing this to them, Dollface responding with,
"Because you were home."
Absolutely cold. They then take off their masks and grab the kitchen knife. James and Kristen, knowing their fates, decide to spend their last moments loving on each other when James gets stabbed in the tummy, and then one final impaling to the heart. Ouch. Poor James, man. They then stab Kristen, and the camera pans out to hear the screams of her. Moments later, Kristen awakens on the floor and crawls to Mike's ringing cell phone, but the masked man catches up, takes the phone, and leaves her for dead. The strangers skedaddle on out of there and drive away, passing the kids that we saw in the opening sequence. The kids eventually come across the house, and noticing the wreckage outside, go in to see what the dealio is. They see the massacre, and try to see if anyone is still alive. The screen then cuts to black. Let me know what you guys thought of The Strangers. Did you love it? Hate it? Let me know down below. Next week, we're going to be covering the sequel that came out nearly a decade later, The Strangers Prey at Night. Until then, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.